The day began in Salem with a quiet sense of anticipation, but for Hope and Beau, it felt as if the entire universe had shifted. The Brady pub, always a familiar and comforting spot, had become the backdrop for something deeper, more profound. After years apart, the weight of their reunion settled between them. Beau and Hope sat together at a corner table, their hands lightly intertwined. The simple act of holding hands felt as if they were rebuilding the bridge that had once connected them so deeply. Hope's voice trembled as she began to speak, her words filled with disbelief and longing. "Beau, it's been so long. I never imagined we'd find our way back here." Her eyes were filled with a mix of pain and hope, the scars of the past still visible, but the possibility of something new, something stronger, flickering in the distance. Beau looked at her, his eyes soft, filled with regret for the time lost, but also with hope for the future. "Life is a way of bringing us back to where we belong," he said gently, his voice steady, but tinged with emotion. It was clear that the years of separation had affected both of them, but there was something undeniable about the connection they still shared. Their conversation ebbed and flowed between shared memories, moments of joy, and unspoken regrets. They discussed the twists of fate that had kept them apart, but also the realization that time had given them the space to grow. They had both changed in ways that would take time to understand fully. But as they talked, they felt the old bond between them begin to rebuild. Hope's words were hesitant at first, but as Beau reassured her, her hesitancy began to melt away. The world outside the pub moved on, with life continuing at its usual frantic pace, but inside their bubble, time seemed to slow. They both knew there were challenges ahead, that there would be moments of uncertainty, but for now, they reveled in the shared connection that had withstood the years. At the DeMera mansion, the atmosphere was starkly different. EJ stood by the window, a rigid figure framed against the backdrop of the sprawling estate. His posture was tense, his gaze distant, as if searching for answers in the world outside. The silence was interrupted by the sound of a door creaking open, and Belle entered the room, her presence commanding yet comforting. She stood for a moment, watching him, before speaking with her usual blend of playful teasing and sharp insight. "Lost in thought, EJ? Or plotting your next move?" EJ turned to face her, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips, though it did little to mask the intensity in his eyes. "Always a bit of both, Belle," he replied, his voice smooth, laced with intrigue. There was something about Belle that had always kept him on his toes, something that both frustrated and fascinated him. Their conversation began lightheartedly, revolving around business, family matters, and the shifting alliances within the DeMera empire. But beneath the surface, there was something more. Each word, each exchange carried an undercurrent of unresolved tension. They had history, a tangled history filled with moments of mutual attraction and animosity, and that history loomed large between them. Neither one was willing to acknowledge the complexity of their feelings, but there was no denying the undeniable chemistry that simmered beneath the surface. As the conversation wound down, Belle lingered for a moment, her gaze meeting EJ's in a silent exchange. It was a moment of understanding, an unspoken recognition that there was still something between them that neither had been able to fully extinguish. Yet, the moment passed, and Belle turned to leave, but not before casting one last look over her shoulder. The air between them was thick, charged, and left unresolved. In the Horton Town Square, Johnny was on edge, his mind racing with questions about his father, about the past that had been hidden from him. He spotted Kate sitting alone at a cafe table, her face buried in a newspaper, and he approached her with determination. "Kate, I need to know the truth about my father," he demanded, his voice urgent and filled with a sense of desperation. Kate looked up at him, her expression guarded. She studied him for a moment before speaking, her words deliberate, weighed with the burden of what she was about to reveal. "Johnny, some truths are harder to bear than others," she said, her voice soft but resolute. Johnny's eyes narrowed as he awaited her explanation. Kate paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle before continuing. "EJ once assaulted Sammy. It's part of his past that you need to understand. It's not something anyone wants to admit, but it's something you need to know. The revelation hit Johnny like a physical blow. The foundation of everything he thought he knew about his father crumbled before his eyes. The anger, the betrayal, and the confusion flooded his mind. He struggled to process the information, feeling as though his entire world had shifted in an instant. Without a word, he turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. Kate watched him go, her expression filled with a quiet sorrow for the son who had just learned a painful truth about his father. Back at the police station, Rafe sat at his desk, the weight of his responsibilities pressing on him. The quiet of the office was interrupted by the sound of the door opening, and Jada entered cautiously, her movements hesitant. She approached him, and her voice was barely above a whisper. "Rafe, there's something I need to tell you." Rafe looked up, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "What is it, Jada?" She hesitated, her hands fidgeting as she struggled to find the right words. "While you were gone, I got close to Sean," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly as she spoke. Rafe's expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and hurt flashing across his face. He remained silent for a long moment, absorbing her words. The weight of her confession hung heavily in the air, and Jada stood there, nervously awaiting his response. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Rafe nodded slowly, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I see." The silence that followed was thick, filled with an unspoken understanding that neither knew how to navigate. Jada felt the guilt settle in her chest, while Rafe tried to come to terms with the complexities of their situation. Neither one of them spoke for several minutes, each unsure of where to go from here. But the unspoken acknowledgement of what had transpired hung in the air, their futures uncertain, but their connection unbroken. At the Horton house, Holly and Doug sat surrounded by old family photographs and letters. Their mission was clear: to return the stolen Horton necklace and restore the family's honor. The task was a daunting one, but together, they were determined to set things right. Holly glanced at Doug, her voice filled with guilt as she spoke. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't realize the consequences when I made that decision." Doug offered her a reassuring smile, his eyes filled with empathy and understanding. "We'll fix it, Holly. Together. You're not alone in this." The bond between them grew stronger as they worked side by side, piecing together the fragments of the past. They sorted through photographs, examined old documents, and uncovered hidden secrets. Each discovery brought them one step closer to their goal, and their partnership, born out of necessity, deepened into a shared commitment to righting the wrongs of the past. In the Choi residence, tension filled the air as Sophia sat on the couch, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Tate stood nearby, his posture defensive, unsure of how to approach the situation. The silence between them was thick, filled with the weight of their shared uncertainty. "Sophia, I want to be with you," Tate said earnestly, his voice low but filled with emotion. "But we need to figure this out together." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty and conflict. "My mother insists on a wedding, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. I don't know what to do." Tate stepped closer, gently taking her hands in his. "We don't have to rush anything, Sophia. We can take it one step at a time. We'll figure this out together, no matter what." Their resolve was palpable, a silent promise to face the challenges ahead side by side. In that moment, the weight of their decision was clear, but so was their shared commitment to one another. No matter what the future held, they would face it as a team. At Salem Hospital, Kristen sat beside Rachel's bed, her eyes never leaving her daughter's still form. The rhythmic beeping of the machines was the only sound in the otherwise silent room. Kristen's hands were trembling as she gently brushed a strand of hair from Rachel's face. "Please wake up," Kristen whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I need you." The door creaked open, and Marlena entered, her presence a quiet balm in the midst of Kristen's distress. She approached Kristen, her voice soft but firm. "Kristen, you need to take care of yourself too," Marlena said, her tone full of concern. Kristen shook her head, her eyes still fixed on Rachel. "I can't. Not until she wakes up. I won't leave her side. Marlena sat beside her, offering silent support. Together, they sat in the stillness of the hospital room, the only sounds the steady beeping of the machines and the deep, worried breaths of the two women. Their concern for Rachel united them in this moment of shared vulnerability. As evening fell over Salem, the Brady pub once again became a haven for those seeking comfort. Beau and Hope sat together, their conversation lighter now, filled with laughter. The earlier tension between them had melted away, replaced by a renewed sense of connection. The weight of the past had not disappeared, but for the first time in a long while, they felt as though they were moving forward. Hope looked at Beau, her eyes filled with affection. Maybe this time, we'll get it right, she said softly, her voice full of hope. Beau smiled, his heart full. With you by my side, I know we will. They leaned in, sharing a kiss that spoke of second chances, of love rekindled, and of a future full of promise. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in their shared moment of happiness, content in the knowledge that they had found each other once again.